Hey guys, Lyndon here, and we're here today with a bike build. This 2022 TE300i is the bike that I'm going to be using in Erzberg 2022. Yes, some of you know I've done Erzberg before. I did it in 2017 on the rally bike, on the factory rally bike. You must go watch that video, link in the top corner. I also did it in 2018 on an electric motorcycle, and that was an adventure because I had the bike stolen on the way to the race. You can also check that out in the link in the top corner in that video. We're going to make a new video for 2022, but this one is all about the bike prep. TE300i Husqvarna. We're going to be preparing it for Erzberg. So lots of protection, different colour, different graphics, tyres, mousses, brakes, protection systems, handguards, exhaust system, upgrading, lots of stuff. And I'm going to take you through what I'm going to do. So without further ado, let's get wrenching. So I'm just going to quickly show you the bike. This is the stock bike. Comes with Michelin tyres. TE300i Husqvarna. And lots of stuff to do to it to get it ready for the race. And I'm going to go through basically what I'm going to do to it to prepare it for Erzberg. So some of you that are following this video will know that I've had a TE300i before. This is a new bike for the coming season. I love riding extreme enduro, so I'm looking forward to it. So here's all the stuff that's going to be going on it. We've got an Axp exhaust system, gripper seat, lots of protection from Axp Racing. So we've got the Bash Plate from Axp, which is a really tough plastic material. We've got disc protection, rear sprocket protection. Handguards, I'm a bit undecided. I don't know if to put the Service ones on or if I'm going to use the Polysport ones, but I'll come on to that. Michelin mousses front and rear. I'll come on to those as I do them. Omega fibre exhaust protection. Amazing quality, this stuff. Really good. So that's from Omega. And Lyndon Posket Racing teal plastics. So we've got the full plastics kit in teal in there. Available from Lyndon Posket Racing. The link is in the top corner of the screen. And also Lyndon Posket Racing Motor X graphics. Also available from Lyndon Posket Racing. And we are going to go all out, and we have some nice WP Pro Component suspension also for this bike. So we are going to have the full shebang this time, and I can't wait to get it built. So all of that stuff needs assembling and putting on there. So let's get this show on the road. So we're going to take out the tubes, and we're going to fit some mousses. Most important part of fitting a mousse is making sure that the bead stays clean and the tyre is fully lubricated. So what I'm doing now is brushing the inside of tyre with Michelin Mousse Lube, which is a silicone grease. And it's important that there's no dry spots. So this is the most time consuming bit. So when you see people changing mousses fast, it's already pre-done or it's not done properly. So I just take the time, make sure I get it done properly, fully painted before I put it back on. We've removed the standard spoke nipple guard for the tube, just protects the tube from the spoke nipples. And what we're going to do is we're going to tape it up with a heavy duty duct tape. This acts as two purposes. One, it seals and stops as much crap getting into the tyre and mousse. and it just also prevents the nipple heads from damaging the mousse. So twofold really. You don't have to do it, but I like to do it, and all my rally bikes are the same. Tape 2 times round like this with a really good quality duct tape, so branded tape, so that it works well. So Michelin bib mousses, lots of theories about which type of mousse you should use for extreme enduro. I'm actually trying a few different things. Because I've got the rally bikes, I often use used rally mousses in the enduro bike because they last again. When they're no good for rally, they're good for enduro. But in this instance, the bike came with a 1990 front tyre, so I'm going to actually use an M15 mousse, which is an enduro mousse. It's a little bit smaller than a desert mousse, which means a lower effective pressure in the 1990 tyre for enduro. Also, so normally we'd use the big M16 front mousse in the rally bike, and then when it's worn down, use it in the enduro bike. But today I'm just going to put a nice new fresh M15 enduro mousse in the front, and in the back I'm going to use an M14 enduro mousse. I'm not going to drill it or anything. I'm just going to use it, and then it will become nice and soft, and then when I go to competition I choose a nice soft mousse. When I go to Erzberg, for example, so a well-used one. It may be a well-used rally mousse, it may be a well-used enduro mousse, it just depends which I like the feel of in the 140 Michelin rear enduro medium. Another really important step, and I think this is what contributes to the longevity of the mousse for me when I'm rally riding, is I always clean the bead with brake cleaner. So I clean it all off with brake cleaner. To really make sure that the bead is dry. Same with the rim. I clean the rim off so there's no slip on the bead, so the bead can do its job inside the mousse. Otherwise it contributes to it sliding, especially on the rally bike where you don't use a rim lock. On the enduro bikes, I'm going to use a rim lock. One advantage of painting the tyre, like I do, is that you don't get all dirty when you're putting the mousse inside. So you just put a dry mousse inside, and all that flakes you can see, that's just the release agent that Michelin use to get the mousse out of the mould. You don't need to worry about that. So I've changed the brake discs to Motormaster Flame brake discs. I've been using them for years. I love the feel of them and the grab that they give. The front one, main reason for changing it is it becomes a floating rotor, and the stock one is not a floating rotor. And the rear one is thicker, therefore it's much stronger and it takes a lot more heat and abuse. So that's why I'm upgrading to these Motormaster brake rotors. You know, it's always a pleasure opening an Axp exhaust, receiving one, because for me it's one of the most beautiful parts on the bike. Look at that. They're just a work of art, they really are. This has got a pressed feature on the side to add strength to the sleeve, so they can keep it as thin as possible so it's light but also still have strength in it. It's even got the logo pressed into the end cap. So it's really durable, no stickers or anything to wear off. These are really incredible. If you haven't seen the factory tour that I did at Axp, it's on YouTube. I'll put a link in the top corner now. Go check it out because it's an awesome video. These two-strokes sound amazing with the Acra silencer on them. So much more crisp and nice. They really do put some effort into making these things sound amazing. Oh, and we've lost the spacer out. So now it's time, before we put the rear wheel in, put some Axp protection on. So we've got a disc guard, and we've also got a rear sprocket guard and a side protection for that as well. So I'm going to now fit all those to the swing arm. So the beauty about this Axp protection is that it's not only big and chunky and strong, but you can see when it slides up into the swing arm, it also protects these two lugs. Now, anyone that does rally or extreme enduro will know that this front lug here can, well, the back one as well, but they can get damaged, and I've had these snap off before. So they have this protection now, which protects those lugs from rocks and big stones and everything, and stops these lugs from getting damaged, and it also stops the bolts that hold the chain guard on from getting damaged. So as you can see, it's quite a beefy chain guard. Now, one thing that people often overlook, whenever you get a new bike, I like to take these chain adjusters out. Normally they're pretty dry, and what happens is water and condensation gets in the swing arm, gets in between the swing arm and the threads, and then it starts to corrode here. So I like to put some copper grease on here, run it in and out a couple of times, really make sure this thread is lubricated so it never seizes up in here. That's what we're going to do now. So we just run this nut back, put some copper grease, lots of copper grease all over the threads, and then just run it in and out of the swing arm a couple of times, get it fully lubricated. Now we're moving on to the disc guard. As you can see, the stock bike doesn't even have a disc guard. And there's various disc guards you can get. There's metal ones, there's aluminium ones, and there's also these heavy duty plastic ones from Axp, which is what I'm going to use. It's got a metal bracket at the top. Basically it bolts to the caliper bracket around here, and then this big plastic piece here protects the disc. I've used them before, never had a problem, so I'm going to use one again. So to fit this disc guard, we just slide the caliper bracket off the swinging arm, and then what we've got is a aluminium bracket for the outside, so that just slides in there like this. We've got one for the inside as well. And then this sandwiches, so basically the disc guard goes in the middle. If I can get it all, hold it all with two hands. And then this sandwich plate goes on the inside like this. Clicks into place nicely. That's it. And then the bolts just go through the whole thing to sandwich it all together. So there's just 4 bolts go through there. A little bit of Loctite on each one, just so that I don't have to keep an eye on it coming loose or anything. And just screw those in there. And that clamps the disc guard into place. I'm not going to tighten them all up just to show you. But basically when all those screws are tight, this is what you've got. So this will then fit behind here. All you will see is the disc protection here, and you've got a full disc guard. Morning, the fan kit arrived, so we can finally fit the fan. And what that involves on these is basically pop it in this bracket to the radiator, screw the fan to it, plug it in and put a relay in the system. It's already got the wiring on the bike, so that's all you need to do here. Take the whole thing off. Probably, like I say, probably don't need to take it off, but fumbling around trying to get to the screws without taking it off, it's just easier just to take it off. Then once you've got it on the bench, you can see, so this is the back of the radiator. This is where the fan goes. You can see then that there's two plastic receivers on the motorcycle, on the radiator bracket. So that pops over there, and then there's two on this side. So actually it's just two plastic screws on this side and two metal screws on this side, and that's it. Then screw the fan to the housing and you're done. I just decided that these screws, which go in the side of the radiator mount, I didn't like the way they stick through. They basically stick through here, and they're close to the first core, so if you hit the side of the radiator, potentially it could puncture the core. So I'm shortening these to half the length, so they only go through the thickness of the outer web, so that if you crush the radiator's not going to start leaking. I think that's a wise move. I just lifted the tank off so I can find the plug for the cooling fan, and it's just here. It says on it cooling fan. So I'm going to reroute that through to the top, connect it to the fan, and then all you need to do is remember that the loom doesn't come with a relay, so we need to put a relay in the loom back here, and then the fan is good to go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cable tie it to there, we're going to tuck it all behind here and in the middle out of the way, so it's not going to get affected by the tank. I'm just going to pump that full of grease in there, my little grease gun, same in there. I'm just going to fit these radiator guards back on, but I'm also going to fit radiator braces, and the ones that I'm going to use are Axp Racing. That's these little fellas. They're a little brace that bolts onto the inside, bolts on the radiator, and on the ones that hold the tank shrouds on. And then if you hit the side of your shroud, it's not going to compress your radiator because it's got some support in these two braces here. I used them on my last 300, they work really well, and I'm going to put them back on this bike. Sometimes you have to have a bit of a bench tidy up when new things arrive, and look what just arrived. This beautiful work of art, the Pro Series shock absorber. Just makes it a lot easier to get the shock in and out when that back end is up. So much easier to get it out now. Oh. Okay, so I'm just going to perch myself here, and I'm just going to talk briefly about these two shock absorbers. So what we've got here is the exact shock that comes out standard on the TE300i. It's got preload adjustment with this ring adjuster here. It's got rebound, it's got high and low speed compression. But it's limited in adjustment, and it's not got as much control or features as this Explo Pro shock, which I'm going to put in the bike. So let's just leave that one on there for a minute, and let's talk about what this one's got and what makes it so special. Without going into too much detail, but as a rule, these Pro Series shocks, they are bred from racing. So I've been using them in the Dakar Rally. I've been using the track shocks in the Dakar Rally for a long time in my rally bikes. And they're just like the best of the best. They have the best material quality, the best fit and finish. There's less friction in them. There's a lot more attention taken to detail to make them the best they can be. Now this shock is good enough for most people and most riding situations, and I've used this standard rear shock for, well, years, to be honest. In my old 300 I had the standard shock in it and it works fine, but there's always an improvement to be made, and that's what this Pro Series one does. So we'll just start first with the shock spring preload. The preload adjuster on on the original shock is you need a tool to do it. You need to slacken the ring, and then you need to rotate the collar around to compress the spring or relieve the spring. On this one, it's really easy. You just put an 8mm T-bar or a drill or anything on there, and you can adjust it up and down infinitely. And that's what makes it so nice to use. It's so easy to adjust on the bike. So you can play around with it a lot easier. Then we've got high speed and low speed compression, but we've got a lot more adjustment. So whereas we might only have 20 to 30 clicks on here, for example, on this shock you might get up to 60 clicks on some of these shocks. So you get a lot more adjustment and a lot more damping control as well. So much more control on this. Then you've got the Super Track system at the bottom. So you have rebound adjustment, and you also have a track system. Now, for those of you that don't know how the track system work, the standard shock doesn't have this. And the track system is there to, it's a bit like, it is a rebound bypass system. What it does is when the rear wheel is off the ground, instead of waiting for the rebound damping to reload the tyre back to the ground, it takes a different damping path. So it opens the port and allows the wheel to drop immediately to the ground. What that does is it means the rear wheel spends more time on the ground, which gives you more traction, more control, and improved tyre life. So that's one of the big things that the track shock gives you over the standard shock, in addition to the extra adjustment and control that you've got. So that's the track shock that I'm going to use. This Explore Pro track shock is going in my 300 this time. I can't wait to go ride with it. So next up is the forks, and we've got these Explore Pro forks this time for the 300. Lovely fork, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the differences between these and the standard forks before we put them in the bike. These are the stock Explore 48mm forks that come in the TE300i. And these are the Explore Pro forks. Now, again, like the shock, the big differences are build quality, tolerances, materials, less friction, but they're also internally quite different. So this is the stock fork. Again, adequate for most riders, does everything you need to do, cost effective to keep the retail price of the bike to an affordable level for customers, for majority customers, but you can always upgrade and you can always improve, and that's what these Explore Pro forks are for. So the Explore Pro forks are quite a little bit different. They're a twin chamber fork, so they've got rebound and damping in both legs, and the damping chamber is separate from the outer chamber, so the seal chamber, the oil chamber. That's twofold. That really helps to keep the damping oil clean. It also can be under a little bit of pressure, so it's got a little bit of pressure under it, which helps cavitation and stops frothing of the oil, and just gives much better damping control. And the way that the damping works on these is it's much more progressive. So they've got much better bottoming control, the damping ramps up much faster, but the special piece of technology that's in these forks is the cone valve, and many of you will hear people talking about cone valve forks, and They were first introduced, I believe, in the rally world, where you're real high speed, hitting things at high speed. And the problem was that when you hit something at high speed and you've got shims in there and oil needs to pass through orifices and move shims out of the way, when you hit something and the wheel needs to move really fast, what it can do is it can feel like the oil's not going through because it hydraulics, and it can also damage the shims. If it pushes too fast, it can bend the shims, and then your damping is not what it should be. So to overcome that, they use something called a cone valve. And inside there's a little cone valve with a spring behind it, that if the fork becomes overloaded under normal operating conditions and it can no longer adequately push the oil through the valve and the shims, then what it does is it blows off that cone valve, and it's basically a different damping mechanism. And on the rally bikes, I've been using them for many years, and it really does help when you're traveling at speed and you're hitting things hard. Because when you hit something hard without the cone valve, it often feels quite harsh and abrupt, and it can damage the fork internally in the shims. With the cone valve, it doesn't do that. As with the shock on these forks, there's much more clicker adjustment, so much more control over the damping. We've got both compression and rebound, and we've also got much more preload adjustment, where we've only got three different positions of preload on the standard fork. On these Explo Pro forks, we've got multiple different positions, so we can really step the spring preload up and down to a comfortable point that we need. So this is the Explo Pro forks that I'm going to run in the 300. Very similar to the fork that I use on the rally bikes, so I'm really familiar with them. But I'm looking forward to trying them in the 300 in the lighter bike with much lighter settings, different cones, different cone springs, lots of different internal settings compared to what I'm used to on the big heavy rally bikes. But it's going to be interesting to see how I get on with them in the enduro bike. So that's the Explo Pro forks, guys. These are going in. Torque the triple clamps, important to make sure you torque these. Putting stickers on has to be one of the worst jobs, I find, personally. Some people like it, think it's therapeutic. I don't like it, but it's also one of the most rewarding. When the job's done, the bike looks great afterwards. So we just got to keep going. Warm the plastics, warm the graphics, line them up, get all the bubbles out. Some people use water. Some people use water to put them on. I prefer to put them on dry. Everybody's different, but for me it works better if I can place them on dry in the right place. I sit them on like that. And you got to get the lettering lined up, which is always tricky. So around about there. And then push it down across the middle and basically push the air out up and down. But you want to warm it up because that really helps to make it stick. So it's already a little bit warm, so I'm just going to do the easy bit here in the middle now. And the edges, always push the edges down with the heat gun, and it stops dirt getting behind the glue and making them lift off. So you just go like this, warm it up and stick it right down on the edges. That's one thing why I don't like using water, because the edges keep lifting until the water's gone. So I prefer it this way. Another little job that I like to do on new bikes, especially on the rally bikes. Basically what happens is if the these two bolts are not Loctited and the surrounding pivot areas that are supposed to pivot are not greased, then what happens is you get friction between the areas that are supposed to slip, like the stand, and then it ends up undoing the stand bolt. And likewise with this, if this little piece here can't move freely because it's not greased, which you can see it is now, then it creates friction, which then over time can undo that bolt if that bolt's not Loctited. So it's really important to take it all off, clean it all up thoroughly, Loctite the two screws, the threads only, don't get any Loctite in the moving surfaces, and grease all the moving surfaces, and you'll never have to touch it again. Like, once it's done, it's done. And then all you have to do, if the stand sticks a little bit, just pour a little bit of oil in or take it off and grease it again. Now, we've got the Axp protection on here and the chain guide. The last piece of protection I'm going to put on is these swing arm protectors, super lightweight. We just pop them on over the swing arm, really just to stop rocks and stuff scraping the swing arm, so that when you come to sell the bike or you don't want them anymore, you don't have a big gouged nasty swing arm. So some people choose to run without them. I just put them on because they're so lightweight and it just helps protect the swing arm, and they're so easy to put on. You just pop them on like this, slide them forwards, push them into place, and then put two heavy duty cable ties around them, and that's it. Time to come off the stand now, so that I can take it off its stand, so that I can get underneath it to work on the bash plate. So Axp Bash Plate, I mentioned it earlier. Used one of these for almost 2 years on my last two-stroke, and while it was really battered when I finished, it did the job. So I was a bit skeptical about the material and stuff, but having used it, I'm now putting another one on. So yeah, and it doubles up as linkage protection as well, because this Husqvarna's got a linkage. So on the bottom of the bash plate there's this linkage protection piece here, which goes in front of the linkage, so if you hit rocks and stuff you can slide over them easier, which I really like. So just got to assemble it and pop it on. It's really easy. So we're just going to take this stock bash plate off, and I'm going to basically replace this little thing with the Axp one with the linkage guard, and it's also got wings on it as well to protect things like the water pump. There's the Axp one. Quite a lot different to fit, sometimes a little bit awkward because you have to push the middle up to get it over the frame, and then push it back to click it in place, and then put the bolts in the front. So they recommend to put it together, assemble it once it's fitted, so pull it down afterwards and fit this plate, but I just leave this plate on all the time, so you can just push it up like this and bang the front usually, and there it goes. There it is. So I've just got these little top hat aluminium washers. They're actually from the front fender, so if you want to get some, you can get those. A little bit longer bolt, and then once you tighten it up, this will push its way into the plastic and stay there, so you don't have you don't keep damaging the plastic on the bash plate when you tighten the nut. Okay, so next up is header pipe protection. Now there's lots of different systems on the market for this: aluminium, full bash plates with header pipe protection. They're quite heavy, but I've been using these Omega fiber carbon header pipe protectors. They fit absolutely spot on. They come with this heat protection inside to space it away from the header pipe so the carbon doesn't get burned. They fit really well and they're super strong. I mean, I had one on my last bike for 2 years and it worked great. So we're just going to fit another one of these Omega carbon protections on here to look after the header pipe, really, just to stop it getting bashed and bent as much as it does, especially when you're training. It gets really bashed and bent and go through a lot of header pipes, so it saves a lot of money by just putting a protection on there. So one of the last finishing touches is the hand guards, and I'm using these teal Polysport hand guards. Why am I using these? Well, they're what's available in this colour and comes with our plastics kits, the Linden Poskett Racing plastics and graphics kits, and these are the hand guards that are available. I prefer a closed hand guard to an open hand guard for the simple reason that it protects your levers a little bit more. But I understand that the closed hand guards can be a bit dangerous because you can get your hands trapped in them and it can break your wrists, and a lot of people don't like that. Also, you can get your fingers trapped against things on the end, but I feel like I get more protection for my hands with a closed hand guard, and that's why I use them. And what I do with these is I just leave them so they rotate, so that if you do get trapped in it, the plastic still rotates around like this, so it doesn't break your wrist. So I use the plastic enclosed guards for the moment. I've used open guards, I've used guards with aluminium bars in them, I've used all sorts, but I feel that this is a good compromise at the moment. And we also use the Acerbis hand guards on the rally bikes, which are also enclosed plastic, and they work really well. So that's why I'm using these, just experience with the enclosed plastic guards. Alright folks, there she is, Mini Rex number 2, my second Husqvarna TE300i that I've had. This is a 2022, fully built and ready to go training for Erzberg. I can't wait to go riding it, but let's get it started, make sure it all works properly, check all the levels and then go for a spin. In the next episode, I get out on my first adventure on the new 300. I go out into the hills of Spain with a couple of my friends in search for rocks in preparation for Erzberg. It's going to be a beasting for both me and the bike.